This happened 5 years ago, while I was 9 months pregnant. I was Christmas shopping at the mall with my then 7 and 15-year-old daughters on one Saturday night in a very safe city with a very low crime rate. There was an Applebee's connected to the mall, and we ended up eating and shopping pretty late. The mall stores were starting to close, so I took my kids to the connected Applebee's for a late dinner. We finish up eating at 10 p.m. and leave the Applebee's entrance into the practically deserted parking lot with shopping bags in tow. As we got to the car, I was in the middle of maneuvering the shopping bags on my arms to find my keys when a 50-year-old crusty-looking guy starts walking up from somewhere in the parking lot with shaggy gray and white hair. He was wearing a faded flannel shirt with old jeans. I noticed him briskly approaching when he was about 40 feet away, and he said, "This is a stick-up. Give me all your money." My blood ran cold, and I stared at him owlishly and shakingly said, "What?" He then said he was just kidding, and came up and stood right next to my daughters, who were standing on the other side of the car waiting for me to unlock the car to let them in. He then starts making small talk with my girls. He's asking things like if they were being good girls for Santa, how old they were, if we got all our Christmas shopping done, and what kind of things we did get. He didn't seem drunk, high, slow, or mentally challenged at all. He was very coherent and seemed of sound mind. Mind you, I was heavily pregnant, alone with my 2 daughters in a mostly deserted parking lot at 10 o'clock at night. And I was now being approached by a stranger who came and stood right next to my kids on the other side of the car, just shooting the breeze, talking to me and my kids with his hands in his pockets, and he was looking over his shoulder. I didn't want to aggravate him, so I politely conversed with him and tried to look calm and nonchalant while trying to disguise my frantic hands digging inside my giant purse for my car keys. This exchange went on for a couple of minutes while he periodically kept looking over his shoulder. I was silently panicking and trying to politely keep the situation from escalating by calmly and nonchalantly talking to him, while also trying in vain to find my damn car keys to get us out of there. They were in there hiding good. I felt that at any moment he was going to pull a knife or gun, or rob me, and my kids were right next to him, away from their mother on the other side of the car, and I couldn't find my fucking car keys to get my kids into the safety of the car. He kept trying to engage them in conversation, and I could see that my oldest daughter was a little weirded out. She kept glancing at me to gauge my assessment reaction to the situation. My kids often tend to not quite recognize potential danger when they are with their parents, since they see us as their protectors, and being that he was only talking and acting friendly, and I was doing my best to stay calm, my kids were oblivious to the alarming situation we were all in. While still desperately digging for my keys, I tried to politely give him hints that the conversation was over by saying things like, "It was nice chatting with you, but I got to get these kids to bed. And it was nice meeting you," telling my girls to say that it was nice to meet him too. My polite attempts to get this guy to leave were not working, because he kept sidestepping my attempts and asking them what their favorite school subjects are, and how nice young ladies they were while I was struggling with the shopping bags, digging into my damn giant cluttered purse. My outgoing 7-year-old was completely oblivious to how not okay this situation was, because he was being friendly, because of the whole time, "I'm with mommy, so I'm safe" child mentality. She started to talk about what she picked out for daddy for Christmas, and started enthusiastically talking about kid stuff, and even asked him if he knew what Minecraft was. They didn't realize that I was becoming desperate to get them the hell out of there. Then I suddenly felt this sinking feeling of dread when I realized that I may have lost my keys in the mall, and that we were stuck outside with this strange man, who kept looking over his shoulders, was showing no signs of leaving. I was thinking that he was waiting for a perfect moment to strike. All he had to do was grab one of my girls and threaten their life, knowing it would make me do whatever he wanted, as long as he wouldn't hurt them. I started to feel my adrenaline spike, and my heart and stomach doing flip-flops. I felt like at any moment shit was going to go down, as the gravity of realizing that there were no other people or witnesses around, and that we were totally alone with him in the moment. The odds were stacked against us, and he had his chance. Then, he all of a sudden said, "Okay, it was nice talking with you. See you later." He walked off in the same direction as to which he came. It wasn't until then I found my car keys and unlocked the car, told my kids to get in fast. My 15-year-old lightheartedly and jokingly said, "Okay, that was weird," and laughed. I was overwhelmed with relief, and then I was confused over what just happened. I thought to myself, why the hell would a guy of seemingly sound mind think it was totally acceptable to go out of his way just to approach a woman and her kids in a deserted parking lot at night just to chit-chat? But being that nothing had happened, I brushed it off and joked about it too. When we got home, my husband greeted us and asked how shopping went, and I said it went well. My 15-year-old told him what happened in the parking lot and how weird it was, and she was joking about it. I started joking too, saying how I was mentally having a panic attack while trying to look calm. Started making fun of myself by telling my husband how I was attempting to inconspicuously rummage through my purse to find my keys. My husband went completely white, and I acknowledged his horrified look of alarm, and I assured him that, albeit creepy, the guy was just talking, and eventually left on his own. Now, my father-in-law is a retired sheriff's deputy, and my husband went through police academy training after graduating high school. What my husband told me completely rattled me to the bone. My husband told me that he was 100% sure that the reason why the guy was hanging around us and chit-chatting was because he was waiting for me to unlock my car, and the reason why he was standing next to our kids was because once I unlocked the car and the kids started to get inside, he was most likely going to force himself into the car with the kids and hold a knife or gun to them to gain leverage on me, to force me to cooperate knowing that I wouldn't abandon my kids. This would have forced me to get into the car with them and do whatever he wanted me to do, which most likely would be to drive to a remote location to do God knows what. And being that he wasn't wearing a mask suggests that his intentions were to also leave no witnesses to identify him. I then remembered that he was positioned by the backseat passenger door, where my 7-year-old was standing by waiting to get in. My husband then told me that most likely the reason why he ended up leaving, because it took so long for me to get my keys, and the longer it took, the more anxious and spooked it made him. And that whole time I was desperate to find my keys, which through some sort of a divine intervention, staying hidden in my purse, thus saved us from potentially being abducted. This happened several years ago. I was a 16-year-old female at the time and lived with my parents. We lived in a small country town, and our house was right next to a massive park with a walking track about 2.5 kilometers long. I frequently took the family dog out for walks in the afternoons after school. It was a warm afternoon and the sun was just starting to set. I walked around the block and was getting close to the park entrance when I noticed a young man, maybe a year or so older than me, riding a bike on the road. It was still daylight, so I wasn't paranoid, but turned my music and my ears off just in case. On the way to the park entrance, there was a fork in the road. One led to a cul-de-sac, and the other to the park entrance. I started walking down this road when I noticed this man on the bike pacing back and forth around the street, as if waiting for someone. I kept noticing him staring at me. I sped up a bit, hoping I was just getting worried over nothing. My dog didn't even notice. She was too stoked about being on a walk. As I sped up, he kept riding his bike closer and closer, but not close enough to indicate that he wanted to talk or that he was going to one of the houses, but just back and forth, as if he was waiting to see which way I would go. I started going down the cul-de-sac, and immediately he rode quicker down that way. While his back was to me, I picked up my dog and booked it down to the park entrance. My parents' house was just next to it. As I closed the front door behind me again, I looked out the window. I saw him appearing agitated, riding his bike around in the front of my house. I don't think he saw me go in. He stopped and looked out towards the park entrance, and eventually seemed to give up and leave. To the man who followed me home on a bike, let's not meet again. To preface, my grandparents are out of town and are visiting Hawaii right now. My uncle is on a business trip and hasn't been home for 3 days. My grandparents have been gone a week and are expected back next week. The way to get to my grandparents' house is kind of scary by itself, especially at 8 p.m. after dusk. There's a 2-mile dirt road and then a turn which lands you at my uncle's house. Down a few hundred feet is my grandparents' house. As everyone is out of town, I was stuck with the task of watering and feeding the 2 animals, my uncle's dog and my grandma's dog. I rode up to my uncle's house with a friend who was driving, and as soon as I opened the car door, I got a sudden pit in my stomach. One of those feelings that you just cannot shake. My hands were quivering, and I quickly threw the dog food into the bowl and ran back to the car. Now, as I drove up to my grandparents' house, I noticed that the lights in the house were on. My friend and I swear that we made sure they were off yesterday, as I had a bad feeling and she did too. So we decided, hey, fuck Sugar, which was my grandma's dog. We decided to leave. On the way out, my friend pointed out that my uncle's lights were on in the house as well. About halfway home, my friend asked whose white car was parked behind my uncle's house. My uncle drives a blue car, which was there, and no one in my immediate family owns a white car. After she mentioned it, I remembered looking at the car, brushing it off as a car my grandpa might be fixing, until I recalled that it hadn't been there any of the previous days. No one to my knowledge has been out to the houses. Person in the white car. Let's not meet. Thanks for watching the video. Please be sure to leave a like, comment, share, and subscribe for more content. Email your stories to thesinfulsavant@gmail.com. I'll leave a link to my email in the description box below as well. I hope everyone had a great week. Until we meet again, stay sinful.